G'day playmates and welcome to another Harmer vid. I am back with DCS and the absolutely brand new C-130J Mighty Hercules module, and we're going to go to training and we're going to have a look at the cold dark setup. In this lesson we learn how to start a C-130J. Okay. Estimated time to complete 40 minutes. I don't think so. Okay, there's the meta. And yep, let's fly it.
Welcome to the C-130J cold start tutorial. In this mission, we'll walk you through the complete cold start procedure, step by step. By the end, you'll be ready to get this magnificent bird up and running. A quick note before we begin. Throughout this tutorial, you'll hear me say response positive. This refers to a command that you can bind to your HOTAS, making it easier to advance through the steps. If you haven't already, I highly recommend setting this up. However, if you prefer, you can simply press the spacebar to move forward. Now, it's crucial to follow the instructions precisely. Rushing ahead can cause problems with the mission triggers, so please just follow along and do exactly what I say when I say. Don't worry, I'll be with you every step of the way. For each step, you'll receive detailed verbal instructions, and we'll also highlight the relevant switches and buttons in the cockpit. This way, you'll know exactly what to do and where to find it. Alright, you ready to get started? Press spacebar or your response positive command, and let's bring the C-130J to life.
Okay, well, you won't be hearing much from me, but you'll be hearing plenty from the tutorial.
Okay, let's begin. Control boost switches on and guarded. Look up at the top of the overhead panel and make sure all the control boost switches are covered by the red guard. Press spacebar or the bind for response positive when you have confirmed they are all closed. Great. First step complete. Next, set all oil cooler flap switches to automatic. Click on the bottom part of the Y-shaped switch to select automatic. Once all switches are set, we'll proceed. Excellent. Next step is to turn the generator switches on. This will ensure that the engines will start providing electrical power as soon as they are started. Excellent. Let's verify the battery switch status. Look to the battery switch and confirm it's in the off position. Once verified, press spacebar or response positive to proceed to the next step. Okay, battery switch is off. Great, let's check the external power APU switch is in the off position. Press spacebar or response positive when you've checked the switch. Next, ensure the ice protection propeller switches are off. Confirm the switches are off. Press spacebar or response positive to continue. Great job. Now we'll work on the bleed air panel. The bleed air system takes high pressure air from the engines and or the APU and delivers it to many locations of the aircraft. Set both the left and right isolation valves to auto. Press spacebar or response positive when ready to proceed. Ensure that the emergency depressurization switch is closed and guarded. Auto rate is set to normal, and move the pressurization mode switch to auto. Great. Now let's configure the fuel system. Ensure both dump switches are closed and guarded. Also, set the fuel tank selector knob to all off. Press spacebar or response positive when complete. Check to ensure the aircraft's exterior lights are off. Press spacebar or response positive when this is verified. Okay, exterior lights are off. Now let's check the FADEC and propeller controls. FADEC stands for Full Authority Digital Engine Control. This system automates many aspects of the engine controls and monitors it for performance and efficiency. Let's set FADEC switches normal, propeller control switches normal, ATCS on and guard down, prop sync on. Press spacebar or response positive when this is checked. Next, we will check the fire and engine start switches. Verify fire engine handles in, engine start switches off. Press spacebar or response positive when this is done. Let's check the APU panel. APU stands for Auxiliary Power Unit, and it's essentially a small jet engine that provides electrical power and bleed air to the aircraft when the main engines are offline. The APU on the C-130 is located near the left main landing gear. Verify APU handle in, APU control switch stop. Press spacebar or response positive when complete. Next up is the ELT panel. ELT stands for Emergency Locator Transmitter, and is the small radio that sends a signal out to mark the location of a downed aircraft. The ELT is set to automatically start to transmit when an impact is detected, or it can be manually selected on by the crew. Verify that the ELT is armed and pinned. Press spacebar or response positive to continue. Ensure that the windshield wipers are off. Press spacebar or response positive to continue. Check the air condition and underfloor fan is set to off. Press spacebar or response positive when complete. Verify the landing gear lever is down. Press spacebar or response positive when you've checked this. Now we'll confirm the landing lights are off. Landing lights set to off and hold. Press spacebar or response positive to continue. Now the hydraulic panel. Aux pump off, anti-skid on. Excellent. Now let's check the aerial delivery panel. Ramp door switch off, air deflector switch close. Press spacebar or response positive when this is complete. Okay, now we are ready to begin to apply electrical power to the aircraft. First job is to locate the battery test switch on the overhead console. Click and hold the switch to the left into the AV position. Ensure the voltage indicates at least 24 volts of direct current. Now click and hold the switch to the right to the utility position and ensure there's at least 24 volts showing. Good. Now we are ready to turn on the aircraft battery. Action the battery switch down to turn it on. The 4 large screens in front of you are the head-down displays, or HDDs. They are numbered 1 through 4, starting on the left. Watch for HDD 1 and 2 to come online shortly. Along with the 2 HDDs, the pilot CNIMU will turn on as well. CNIMU stands for Communication, Navigation, and Identification Management Unit. It's a critical component of the aircraft's advanced avionics system, and it essentially acts as the central hub for managing all communication, navigation, and IFF functions. The third and final thing to check is to ensure that the 3 landing gear position indicators are showing 3 green. This means the landing gear are down and there are no faults. You can press the Master Caution Reset button in front of you to silence the alarms.
Okay, now we are almost ready to start the APU. Ensure that you're on the Power Up page on the Pilot CNI. Press spacebar or response positive when you're on this page.
Excellent. Now we'll move on to starting the APU. First step is to turn on some exterior lights and let everyone know that things are beginning to happen around the aircraft. Set the external lights, top strobe switch red, navigation lights bright and flash.
Now we need to ensure that the APU bleed is off by ensuring there is no green light inside the button. Press spacebar or response positive when you've confirmed that there is no green light.
Okay, it's time to start the APU. Turn the knob to the start position and hold it there until the green light appears. Once that happens, you can release the knob and it'll click back to the run position. The APU is starting. Monitor the EGT, the exhaust gas temperature, to ensure it stays below 680 degrees. If it climbs above that, abort the APU start by turning the switch to stop. If the fire light illuminates, pull the fire handle to the right. Great job! APU is up and running. Now turn the external power APU switch to APU. This will allow the APU to provide electrical power to the aircraft. Excellent. Now that the APU is providing power, more aircraft systems will start to come online. Let's get the HUD down and turn it on. Click on the spot on the HUD's hinge to lower it into place. Okay, HUD is down. Just to the right is the HUD mode selector. Select Tactical and Nav. Last step is to turn the HUD on itself by pulling the knob out. This will set the HUD to auto brightness. Okay, great. Let's make sure the radar is set to off. Press spacebar or response positive when complete. Okay, let's verify the fuel panel is set up correctly. Left and right dump switches closed. FLCV test switch off. Cross ship switch closed. Transfer switches off. Cross feed switches closed. SPR valve and drain valve closed off. Tank select off. Press spacebar or response positive to continue. Time to test the smoke detectors. To do this, we're going to look up to the AMU panel, which sits above the HDD displays. AMU stands for Avionics Management Unit, and there are 4 on the Herc, 2 for the pilot and 2 for the co-pilot. On the pilot's AMU, press the pre-flight soft key. Now on the left AMU, you should see smoke detector on the top left soft key. Once you press this, the smoke detector test will run. 3 seconds after pressing this, you will hear alarms and should see warnings on the ACOS display. Ensure that these warnings appear. Smoke under deck, smoke left forward cargo, smoke aft cargo, smoke right forward cargo. Go ahead and run the smoke detector test now. Okay, smoke detector test is underway. Watch for the following warnings on the ACOS. Okay, smoke detector test is complete. Now we do the fire detection test. Fire test initiated. Watch for these warnings on the ACOS. Look to see that the fire lights are illuminated on the overhead panel. Fire detection test complete. Now we need to reset any tripped electronic circuit breakers, or ECBs. Press the ECB button on the COM nav breaker panel. Now press the number 2 on the CMBP and then the top left soft key to put the ECB page up on HDD2. Great, you should now see the ECB page on HDD2. Okay, now we see the ECB page on HDD2 and it shows several breakers that we must reset before engine start. What we need to do is enter each number and then reset them. An easy way to do this is to enter all ECB numbers shown, one after the other with no spaces. Then we press reset twice. Type 108, 109, 481, 482, 483, 609, 613, 902 into the CMBP scratchpad and press the soft key for reset twice. Once you do, the ECB page will be cleared of faults. If you don't clear the ECB panel before engine start, bad things can happen, such as engine fires. Beware.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start at the top with 481 and go down the list. Whoops. 482, 483, 482, 483, 902, bottom list 108, 109, 609, 613, press reset twice.
Okay, all popped ECBs have been reset. Now press the top left soft key to get the engine ACOS page back up on HDD2. Okay, the engine ACOS page should now be up on HDD2. Press spacebar or response positive to continue. Great, now let's test the warning lamps. Action the switch up and down to test the lamp lights. Check that all lamp lights are on. Great, we've checked the lights and lamps. Let's get the bleed air going now. Turn on APU bleed air by pressing the APU bleed air button on the overhead panel. Watch for the green light to illuminate and that the bleed air pressure is within limits. Okay, watch to make sure the bleed air pressure is within limits. Now we open the nacelle shutoff switches. All engine nacelle bleeds are open. Now close the APU bleed and watch the pressure. Okay, APU bleed off. Now we'll need to wait for the pressure to drop to 30 psi and then we'll start a 22-second timer. When that 22 seconds has passed, the pressure must be higher than 15 psi. If it's 15 or below, we have a problem. Bleed PSI is 30. Start the clock. If it gets to 15 in less than 22 seconds, we have a problem. Okay, it's been 22 seconds and the bleed air pressure is greater than 15 psi. We're good to go. Now we put the nacelle shutoff switches back to auto. Great, all nacelle bleeds are back to auto. Now open the APU bleed air again. Okay, APU bleed is open. Now let's close the left and right isolation valves and the divider valve. When we do, watch for the appropriate ACOS warnings. Did you see these advisories on the ACOS? Yes? Good. Now put the isolation and divider valves back to auto. Great. All isolation switches are back to auto. Okay, now let's set up the air conditioning panel. Flight station and cargo compartment power switches on. Flight station and cargo compartment temperature manual switches off. Cross flow valve manual switch off. Underfloor fan switch, fan. When this is set, press spacebar or response positive to continue. Okay, time to check the trim. Ensure that the elevator trim tab power switch is in the off position. When verified, with the trim switch on the yoke, dial in some elevator trim, up and down. There should be no movement of the trim tab indicator. Once you've checked this, press spacebar or response positive to continue. Now we will check the trim tab emergency power. Put the trim tab power switch into emergency. Try using the trim on the yoke. There should be no movement. Press spacebar or response positive when you've checked this. Now use the emergency aileron and elevator stick to move the elevator trim up and down. This should operate the trim. Once you've run the trim up and down in this setting, we will continue. Ensure the trim indicator is moving up. If so, can you see the trim position indicator? Excellent. Emergency elevator trim controls are checked. Now put the elevator trim tab switch into the normal position. Use the trim on the yoke to run the elevator trim up and down through the full range of motion. Make sure the movement is shown and correct on the elevator trim indicator. When you're satisfied with the elevator trim, set it to 0 and press spacebar or response positive to continue. Move the aileron and rudder trims through their full range of motion and then return them to center. Make sure to watch the trim position indicators to make sure this is working as it should. When this is complete, press spacebar or response positive to continue. Time to check the CNIMU. Ensure that you're on the Power Up page of the CNIMU. Press spacebar or response positive when you are on this page. Look to see that the CNIMU NavAid database is valid and the mission date is entered correctly. Also, look to see if the align pause is correct. If the align position data is not visible, just stand by till it is. It takes about 3 minutes from the time the APU power is selected on. Once the align position data is on the CNI, you can press Auto Nav.
Excellent. Auto nav is now on. Now in 1 minute 25 seconds on HDD1 and on the HUD, you should see the pitch ladder appear. Once this is visible, we will select master avionics on, but not before.
Okay, time to select Master Avionics on the Pilot CNI. Alright, Master Avionics is now on. Now let's confirm the weight and balance and the perf init weights are verified. Press index on the CNI MU, followed by the soft key for perf weight. Now press the weight and balance soft key. Let's verify the fuel load. It should be 17.5. The gross weight should now show 103.7. When you verify this, press the index key on the CNI MU. And now back to the Power Up page. Now we're going to tackle some more things on the CNI MU. First step is to build and or check the route that's programmed into the aircraft. When you spawn in, the C-130J will have the waypoints from the mission editor built into the CNI already. You will have to type the destination field though. Let's get started. Press the Route 1 button on the CNI MU. Now we will type the destination into the CNI, which is UG5X. That third character there is the number 5. Go ahead and type that into the CNI. Now press the destination soft key. Okay, now we'll cycle through the route on the CNI. Press next page to step through the route. Once you step through the route, press spacebar or response positive to continue. Now activate the route by pressing activate. Now press execute. Now that the route is in the system, we can start putting performance numbers in. Press perf init to continue. Again, we'll double check the aircraft fuel and weight. So it should be 17.5 pounds of fuel and a gross weight of 103.7. Press next page. Here we will check the climb speeds and set the transition altitude. The transition altitude is the altitude which the climb will change our altimeters over to the ICAO standard, which is 29.92 inches of mercury, or 1013 millibars. Today, this just happens to be the same altimeter setting we have on the ground. Enter 7000 in the CNI scratch pad now. Now press the Trans Alt soft key. Okay, transition altitude is in. Press the next page button to continue. Now we're on the cruise page. We can see here our cruise altitude is set at 3000. What we need to do now is put in the upper level winds. Today the winds are light out of the east at 12 knots. Enter 090/12 into the CNI scratch pad now. Now press the cruise wind soft key to enter the winds into the aircraft. Press next page to see the descent page. We will now check and set the TOLD data. TOLD stands for takeoff and landing. Press the TOLD index soft key now. We are now on the TOLD index page. First we will fill out the drag index. The drag index is a number that represents the drag coefficient for a particular aircraft with a particular configuration. This information might be found at the end of the aircraft manual, or the mission maker may give you this in the briefing package. Today our drag index is 10. Enter 10 in the scratch pad and press the soft key adjacent to the drag index. Now we will enter our departure airport and runway into the top right field. Enter UGKS/09 into the scratch pad and press the top right soft key, the one opposite of the TOLD init. Now press Hold Init. Okay, we are now on the Hold Init page. On the left side of the pilot CNI, you can see a field for slope. This is the average runway slope, and it can be either positive or negative. The runway we're taking off from has no slope, so enter 0 in the scratch pad and press the soft key next to slope. Now we will enter the surface winds. Put 090/09 into the scratch pad and press the soft key next to surface winds. The next field to enter is the temperature. It's currently -5 Celsius outside, so enter -5 into the scratch pad and press the soft key next to temperature. Excellent. Now we will enter the altimeter setting. This can be entered in inches of mercury or in millibars. The altimeter setting here is 1013 millibars, or 29.92 inches of mercury. Enter either value and press the soft key next to baro. The next field is for the climb winds. So if we're only planning on flying at 3,000 feet on this hop, it's not really necessary to do this. But we're going to do it anyway. Enter the climb winds of 080/12 into the scratch pad and press the soft key next to climb winds. Now press the takeoff data soft key on the lower left of the CNI to get to the takeoff data page.
Okay, on this page we see several numbers. Make note of all of these, but especially power, 4705 horsepower. Refusal speed equals 97 knots. V rotate is 97 knots. And V OBS equals 114 knots. Once you have these numbers written down, press spacebar or response positive to continue.
Now that we have these numbers written down, we'll enter them in the mission computer. Press the MC index on the CNI. Press the soft key on the left for V speeds. Now we'll enter the speeds from the takeoff data here. And refusal speed is the speed which you decide whether to take off or abort if you have a problem. Anything below that speed and you can safely reject the takeoff if performed correctly. Anything above this speed you must go fly. The V2 V OBS is the speed you should climb away at. Refusal V1 equals 97. VR V rotate is 97 as well. The V2 V OBS is 114. Enter the above values into the CNI and press the spacebar or response positive to continue. Okay, we are now onto section 3 of the cockpit setup checks, which is the ref mode panel. Have a look up at the ref mode select knob. It should be straight up on the IAS position, and the value to the right should read 114. If any other value than 114 is here, it means you did not set up the V2 VOBS correctly in the mission computer. Go and correct this if needed. Once it shows 114 in the window, rotate the knob once to the left. Okay, this is the RAD-ALT setting page. You can rotate the ref set knob on the right to change the altitude, which will get a warning tone as you descend below a certain altitude. Change this if you want to. Otherwise, rotate the ref select knob to the left again to set takeoff horsepower.
Okay, ground warning set to 200. Whoops.
We will now set the takeoff horsepower into the ref select using the formula takeoff data rounded to the nearest 50 and subtract 200. So in our case, it's 4,700 minus 200 equals 4,500. When we set this into the aircraft, a hash mark will appear on the HP display. We will reference this on takeoff. If the engines are not producing the required horsepower as we're going down the runway, we will know that the engines will not give us the performance we are expecting, and we may wish to abort the takeoff at that time. Rotate the ref select knob until the value reads 4,500. Once this is set, rotate the ref mode knob clockwise to the FPA setting.
Okay, this is the FPA setting, which is the flight path attitude. This is a reference we'll see on the HUD and the primary flight display, which will indicate the amount of pitch up we'll need to make our performance targets. A normal takeoff will rotate the nose up at 3 degrees per second, but during a max effort takeoff, it's crucial to get the nose to this position at a rate of 5 degrees per second to ensure obstacle clearance. Today our gross rate is under 145,000 pounds, so we'll set the FPA to positive 7.4. Set the FPA to plus 7.4, and then rotate the ref mode clockwise again until you get to minimums. Now this setting will determine when the warning system will verbally announce minimums. Set this to the local approach minimums of whatever destination you're flying into. Let's set this to 200, and then rotate the knob back to IAS. Now we will set the AMU. Ensure that you're on the main menu on the AMU page, and press the spacebar or response positive to continue. Press the PFD soft key on the AMU. This will bring up the sources used for the primary flight display. The pilot sources should all be on 1, while the co-pilot sources should all be on number 2. Since we're flying from the pilot seat, make sure the FD source is on pilot. When you've confirmed this, press the main menu soft key on the AMU. Now press the Now Select soft key on the AMU. Here we need to confirm the following. Pilot nav is CDI iNav1. Pointer 1 is TAC1. Pointer 2 is TAC2. When confirmed, press the main menu soft key on the AMU. Now we're going to set the nav radar onto HDD1. Press the nav radar soft key on the AMU. Press HDD1 soft key to get the nav radar display on HDD1. Good. Now press the overlay soft key. Here we can change the parameters of the nav radar display. I prefer to take off with the range set to 10 nautical miles. To set that, now press the soft key next to the 10. Press the overlay soft key again. Let's also make sure that everything else in the nav radar display is to our liking. You can set how the heading tape is displayed, magnetic, true, or grid. You can also set to display the RWR on the nav radar as well. Let's put the RWR up on the nav radar display by pressing the RWR soft key. Great, that's all set up. Press the main menu soft key on the AMU. Next we'll have a look at the ACOS page. We'll check the warnings and advisories that are there, and store any that we want to ignore for now. The only thing showing right now should be the anti-skid advisory. We want to keep that up on the display so we won't store it for now. TAWS stands for Terrain Awareness and Warning System, and it helps increase awareness to the flight crew about the terrain surrounding their aircraft. Let's put that up on HDD4 by pressing the TAWS soft key on the Copilot AMU. Now press the HDD4 soft key. Perfect. Now we'll go back to the main menu on the Copilot AMU.
Okay, now it's time to set up our communication radios and our intercom using the Pilot CNI. Press the COM soft key on the CNI now. Now we'll enter the ground control frequency of 132.0. Don't forget the decimal place when you enter this number. After that's in the scratch pad, press button right 3 on the Pilot CNI.
Okay, radio's tuned to 132.0. In order to hear things in our headsets, we'll need to turn on the intercom, select which radios to monitor, adjust their volumes, and select which radio we will transmit on. Pull the radio knobs out for both VHF1 and the UHF1 radios. Rotate the volume knobs to about mid-range. Also, turn on the radio transmit switch to V1 setting, which is VHF radio number 1. If you'd like, you could do the same with VHF2 and UHF2, or the HF radios as well. Huck that setup complete. Now we'll begin the before starting engines checklist. First 8 items were things we've already verified. The intercom is checked and set. Power up checklist complete. Cockpit setup complete. Exterior lighting panel set. The top strobe is on red and the nav lights are flashing. Clear the APU, not applicable. The APU is running. The external power APU switch is on APU, and the fuel management panel is checked. Next step is to reset the FADEC switches. Reset all 4 of these now. Excellent, all FADECs are reset. Now we'll need to reset all the NIUs, which stands for Nacelle Interface Units. Make sure on the main page of the AMU, press spacebar or response positive when you're there. Okay, from here, press AMU button 2 labeled Engine. Okay, we are now on the engine page of the AMU. Press button 1 to get into the engine diagnostics page. Okay, now we have the engine diagnostics page up. Press button 4 to get into the NIU reset page. On the AMU to the right, you will see the NIU reset page. Cycle through the engines by pressing button 1. On each engine, press the NIU reset button to reset each one. When this is complete, press spacebar or response positive to continue.
Great. All NIUs are reset. Let's get back to the main engine data page by pressing button 1 on the pilot's left AMU. Okay, we are back on the engine data page. We will leave it here for now and move our attention to the standby. We are now going to check that the low speed ground idle lights, LSGI, will illuminate and disengage. Ensure the throttles are in the ground idle position. You can reference the pilot's right AMU and see the PLA values are about 17.5. PLA is the number that references the angle of the power levers. A PLA of 17.5 is ideal for ground idle, but anywhere between 16.0 and 18.0 will work. Now press the low speed ground idle buttons under each throttle and make sure all 4 are illuminated.
Okay, all throttles indicate LSGI. Now move all the throttles forward to the flight idle position. Watch and make sure that all LSGI lights go out, and then move the throttle back.
Note that all LSGI lights are off. Now move the throttle back into ground idle.
Good, the throttles are back to ground idle. Press the LSGI buttons below each throttle and make sure they are illuminated. Next in the before starting engines check is to ensure we've completed the bleed air panel setup and the air conditioning panel setup. Since we've already gotten to this stage, we'll call both of those set. Next step is to ensure the ramp and door controls are set to neutral. This is a loadmaster or a crew chief item, so we'll say that they're checked. Now we will check the hydraulics. Set anti-skid switch on. Emergency brake select switch, emergency. Aux pump switch on, the pressure is checked. Engine pump switches on, the lights should be out. Suction boost pump switches on with the lights out. Next item is to confirm with the crew chief that the nose landing gear, NLG, pin, and shocks are removed. Before starting engine checks complete. The engines may be started in any order, but number 3 is typically started first, then number 4, number 2, and number 1 last. This is due to the aerospace ground equipment, or age, that is typically connected to the left side of the aircraft. There's lots of things to do and monitor when you're starting the engine, so be prepared. First, ensure the engine display is on HDD number 2. Press spacebar or response positive to continue. When the engine start switch is turned on, we will be looking for several things. First off, we'll note the green light next to the start switch becomes illuminated. Then we'll check the engine display on HDD2 to see a box around the engine readouts and ensure the clock has started. We'll check to see that there's a bleed air pressure drop, and we'll note the NG, engine oil pressure, and fuel flow are showing movement. And finally, we'll note the engine lights off, the gearbox pressure is within limits, and that beta shows on the engine display. Okay, you got all that? Let's go. Turn and hold engine 3's starter switch to the start position until the green light comes on. Engine's boxed on the display and the clock has started. Did you see the bleed air pressure drop? I hope so. Note the oil pressure is coming up and the fuel flow is flowing. Okay, the start light is off and the engine is stabilized. Now we repeat the process for engine number 4. Let's start engine 2 now. And finally, let's start engine 1. Okay, all engines have started successfully. Only one more item left, and that is to reset the FedEx one last time. Starting engines checklist complete. Okay, now we will get into the before taxi checklist. First step is to close the APU bleed air valve. Now we'll upspeed the engines by taking each out of LSGI. It's time to start the anti-ice system test. While that test is running, we'll test the flight controls. Ready to begin? Put the engine anti-ice on now. Great. Now move the wing empennage switch to anti-ice. And put it back into de-ice. This will start the bit test. Great, the bit test is running, and we'll set the flaps and start checking the flight controls. Set flaps to 50%. Great, flaps are set at 50. Now cycle the flight controls. Yoke all the way forward, all the way back, left and right. Also check the rudder pedal movements, left and right. Yoke forward. Yoke back. Yoke left. Yoke right. Rudder left. Okay, flight controls are free and correct. Now we need to put the PFD, primary flight display, back onto HDD1 and HDD4 for the pusher test. Press spacebar or response positive when you have done this. Ensure the pilot AMU is on main menu and press the GCAWS, TAWS, and stall soft key. GCAWS stands for Ground Collision Avoidance System. For this mission, we want to make sure the TAWS, GCAWS, stall warning, and pusher are all on. Press spacebar or response positive to continue. We will now perform the pusher test. If the aircraft detects that it is approaching or is in the stall condition, the control column will push forward in an emergency attempt to lower the AOA. By performing this pusher test, we will check that it does in fact work, and that we can override it by pressing the autopilot disconnect switch on the yoke. Once we press the pusher test soft key, nothing will happen immediately. In about 11 seconds, the yoke will be forced forward by the system. Once this happens, you must press the autopilot disconnect button on your yoke, which will stop the pusher. You must do these steps in order to pass the pusher test. Okay, push pusher test now. Okay, the 11-second timer has begun. Do not move the yoke at all.
Stall.
Press autopilot disconnect now.
Stall.
Good job. The stick pusher test is complete. Note, if the ACAWS indicates the test has failed, run it again. Okay, press spacebar or response positive to continue. Okay, it's been 1:30 since we've started the ice protection bit test. Check to make sure the bit is cleared on the ACAWS, and then put the wing empennage switch back to anti-ice, and the engine anti-ice switch back to auto. Great, now we will ensure the prop anti-ice switches are in auto. Now we move on to the Automatic Flight Control System, AFCS, and the autopilot check. Press the heading button and the select button on the pilot mode select. Now turn on the autopilot. Okay, the autopilot is on. Now use the heading adjust knob and turn the bug to the left and to the right of the aircraft's current heading. The yoke should turn in the direction indicated on the HSI, and so should the flight director bar. When you've done this, and when you're satisfied, press spacebar or response positive to continue.
Now use the autopilot turn wheel to check roll left and roll right. The yoke should follow these commands. Press spacebar or response positive to continue.
Excellent. Now use the autopilot pitch up and down to check the yoke movement forward and back. When you've checked this, return the yoke to the center and press the autopilot disconnect one time to listen to the oral warning, and then press it again.
Autopilot. Autopilot.
Excellent. Now it's time to set the takeoff trim. Set the pitch trim to 0 and ensure the aileron and rudder trims are neutral. Press spacebar or response positive to continue. Okay, now we'll set the air conditioning panel for this flight. Set the flight station and cargo compartment power on, and the underfloor switch to heat/fan. AC panel is set. Okay, set the radar to on. Set the nav lights to steady. Okay, nav lights are on steady. All that's left is to turn on the taxi light and release the parking brake. The tutorial is ended. Go fly and do something fun.
Okay, engine page. Okay, I shouldn't really be doing this, but engine diagnostics. Okay. We need this to be about 17. Brake suppressed, handbrake off, and we should start to roll forwards. And here is the nose wheel steering key. Okay, we're going to roll forwards or backwards. Okay. Yeah, rolling forwards. Okay.
Clear to taxi to runway 9.
Now, if we actually wanted to head backwards, then the PLA I think should be in the minus setting. Just check. No, it doesn't need to be in the minus setting. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. Alrighty, so let's go back. And I'm just going to I'm not going to take off, but I am going to taxi. Really tricky. I think I'll leave it at that. Yeah, okay, I'll leave it there. Just get my PLA down, put the handbrake on. We're all good. Just get this down to about 17. Yep. Okay. Okay, so, yeah. Whoops. And that's obviously a thing you gotta watch out for. Very large wingspan. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed that. I'll catch you on the next one.